You see that on January 6th, the White House put out a bulletin, whitehouse.gov/J6, which officially, the government officially adopts the big lie and fabricates a complete, entirely alternate history. What is this web design? It shakes because they're evil. See? Yeah. Why is it shaking? Because they're evil. I don't want to go through this whole thing. The whole thing is insane, but we can, at the very least, we should go through the timeline. Pre-January 6, 2021, President Trump invites Americans to D.C. Trump invites patriotic Americans to Washington, D.C. on January 6 for a peaceful and historic protest against certifying the stolen 2020 election. He emphasizes standing up for election integrity while calling for peaceful demonstration. Hundreds of thousands respond to the call to show support. At the Save America rally, Trump delivers a powerful speech. At the Ellipse, Trump speaks to hundreds of thousands of supporters, detailing evidence of election fraud and urging the crowd to march to the Capitol to peacefully and patriotically make their voices heard. He stresses the need to fight for the country through strength and determination, explicitly calling for peaceful protest. The crowd responds with massive enthusiasm. Then, patriots march to the Capitol. Following the president's speech, the massive crowd peacefully marches down Constitution Avenue to the Capitol to protest the certification of the fraudulent election. The march is orderly and spirited, with flags, signs, and chants supporting Trump. Then, Capitol Police response escalates tensions. The Capitol Police aggressively fire tear gas, flashbangs, and rubber munitions into the crowd of peaceful protesters, injuring many and deliberately escalating tensions. Video evidence shows officers inexplicably removing barriers, opening Capitol doors, and even waving attendees. I said back then, and I'll say it again, the Capitol Police should have just mulched the entire crowd right then and there. It would have been a very different timeline, but for one, it's essentially just an endorsement of the Republicans' position on what cops should be able to do to everyone else. And for two, it would have been the right thing to do. It would have been legal. Even waving attendees inside the building, actions that facilitated entry while simultaneously deploying violent force against others. These inconsistent and provocative tactics turned a peaceful demonstration into chaos. But Trump urges for calm. As events unfold, Trump repeatedly calls for peace, tweeting support for law enforcement and releasing a video telling supporters, "Go home in peace," while reiterating love for them and election concerns. He consistently promotes nonviolence despite the attack on attendees and emotions running high. Then, the leaked Pelosi video reveals security lapses. And this is the video where Pelosi says she takes responsibility for what happened, but that was just a one-off comment she made referring to not having brought more Capitol Police on to anticipate the attack in the Capitol. Ashley Babbitt murdered in cold blood. Unarmed Air Force veteran and Trump supporter Ashley Babbitt is fatally shot by Capitol Police Lieutenant Michael Byrd without warning as she climbed through a broken window towards the Speaker's lobby. I love even here, as she climbed through a broken window toward the Speaker's lobby. No weapon was found on her, and she posed no threat. Byrd faced no charges. 3 other Americans were killed: Roseanne Boyland, Kevin Greeson, and Benjamin Phillips. Which of these 3 had a heart attack after tasing their balls? One of these 3 had a heart attack because they accidentally tased their own balls. All of them? All of them. Mike Pence refuses to act. Vice President Mike Pence, who had the opportunity to return disputed electoral slates to state legislators for review and decertification under the U.S. Constitution, chooses not to exercise that power in an act of cowardice and sabotage. Instead, Pence presides over the certification of contested electors, undermining President Trump's efforts to address documented fraud and ending any chance to correct the election steal. You know what's got to piss the Trump administration off, big time? It's got to really, really get under their skin. This kind of rewriting history bullshit would work if it was 1623. If history was only being kept in logbooks by, reclusive monks, and you could just go there and burn those books, you could rewrite history, and in the future, historians would only say, we don't really know what happened, you know? But now, no matter how hard they try, they can't do it. They can't move the needle on this, you know? It could still work. It really can't, though. It really can't. Even Germany, Nazi Germany, they weren't really able to, undo much of their own history. Let me put it this way. Nazis had undisputed control of Germany for over a decade. In spite of that, we don't really have a muddled timeline when it comes to World War I, the Great Depression in Germany, or the extent to which they claim Jews were involved in either. If it was so easy for them to rewrite history, then wouldn't we now, our historians, they would be like, oh, well, we think the historical texts are lying because the Nazis burned all the old ones and covered it all up. Dude, we even have records of the shit they burned from that Institute of Sexology or whatever. Who was that guy, the Berlin sex researcher who was like working with trans people back in the 1920s? They burned all of his documents. Today, he's still known, and so are his writings. Magnus Hirschfeld, thank you. You still have all the records of the Great Purges and who Stalin made up shit on? Yeah, I guess what I'm saying, in the modern world with modern bureaucracies, it's basically impossible to hide the fact that this is all a lie. All you can really do is distract people, like, in the meantime, and it takes constant effort to do that. At the end of the day, for the most part, most people's perceptions tend to, like, realign. You're leaving out the part where he killed all the Nazis? Sure, but like the timeline got corrected with Stalin as well, and the Soviets weren't all killed. I mean, the Soviet Union collapsed, sure, but the Trump regime eventually will also collapse. Stolen election certified. Dun dun. After law enforcement clears the Capitol, Congress reconvenes late that night and certifies Joe Biden's electoral votes. Votes from battleground states marred by massive mail-in ballot fraud, hidden suitcases of ballots, exploding water pipes, voting machine irregularities, and unprecedented pandemic-era rule changes that bypass state legislatures. 2020 is considered the greatest election theft in U.S. history, with widespread fraud deliberately ignored by courts, officials, and the media. President Trump is silenced. Despite his explicit calls for peaceful protest, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and other platforms collude to ban Trump, citing incitement in a blatant act of election interference for the election that already happened. JP Morgan, Bank of America, Capital One, and other major financial institutions debank President Trump and his family, closing accounts, freezing funds, and denying services in a ruthless campaign of financial persecution to destroy them politically and economically. Legacy media suppresses evidence of fraud. The mass arrests of patriotic protesters. The Biden DOJ launches a coordinated nationwide dragnet, arresting over 1,500 J6 attendees in pre-dawn raids, many for mere trespassing or parading. Hundreds were held as political prisoners for years in harsh conditions, denied speedy trials, and given lengthy sentences in what is considered an unprecedented and diabolical weaponization of federal law enforcement against Trump supporters. At least 5 J6 defendants took their own life while facing prosecution. Aww. The J6 Select Committee exposed. Speaker Pelosi's hand-picked J6 Select Committee, stacked with anti-Trump Democrats and 2 rhinos, Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, spent over 3 years and nearly $20 million in taxpayer funds in a propaganda spectacle to demonize Trump and his supporters. I agree, this was a massive waste of time. This is what they did instead of sicking Merrick Garland on him. They coached witnesses like Cassidy Hutchinson, leading to calls for perjury and witness tampering investigations against them, while withholding exculpatory evidence, deleting encrypted files, and ignoring security failures. We're almost done, guys. We're almost there. We've almost learned everything there is to know about January 6th. Weaponized prosecutions target President Trump. Biden prosecutors bring multiple indictments against President Trump over his legal election challenges, including J6-related federal charges. FBI agents conduct an unprecedented raid on his Mar-a-Lago home, including searching through First Lady Melania Trump's private wardrobe and personal belongings. Oh my God, they did a panty raid! They're sniffing it. That's crazy. They target his local lawyers, aides, and associates with baseless charges, threatening decades-long prison sentences to pressure them into flipping with false testimony against him. FBI entrapment operation exposed. Subsequent investigations, congressional testimony, DOJ admissions, and whistleblowers confirmed the FBI had at least 26, and likely dozens more, confidential informants and assets embedded in the J6 crowd. Figures like Ray Epps, who was caught on video repeatedly urging people to go into the Capitol, were charged only minimally. Democrats successfully flipped the narrative to brand peaceful protesters as insurrectionists while waging the true insurrection against a legitimate election. And then finally, fight, fight, fight. Lawfare fails, President Trump prevails. Despite relentless deep state efforts to imprison, bankrupt, and assassinate him, all designed to sabotage his political comeback through fabricated indictments, invasion raids, and rigged show trials, President Trump emerges triumphant. Fueled by unbreakable resolve, chills, the fierce loyalty of his courageous family team and patriotic Americans, and God's unmistakable grace, he delivers a landslide 2024 victory and reclaims the White House in the greatest comeback in American history. Let's go! Thank you, whitehouse.gov/J6. What's crazy is I don't think AI was used to write this. No, AI is way too sycophantic and, funnily enough, biased by truth to write something like this. Much easier to write it yourself. Biased by truth is the wrong way of saying that. Maybe I should say they're not biased towards lying in this kind of way. Yeah, anyway. Pretty neat, huh? All of that from The White House. Yeah, I don't know. Massive show trials when the next administration comes around, right? Right, everyone? Massive, like, kangaroo court, just like tens of thousands of people. Huge, big trials. Huge, huge, huge trials, Merrick Garland should be in prison for the rest of his life. I agree. Yeah, I agree. I do believe that, yeah. That was a degree of prosecutorial incompetence so severe that as far as I'm concerned, is a crime. They should have picked the guy that went after the KKK so hard members killed themselves as head of DOJ. That's so based. Doug Jones, my goat. Clinton's second term's DOJ. This goddamn website page construction. Jesus Christ. Oh, man. At the end of the page. There he is. Is your boy. Where's my hug? Mother. Is it just me or did they embiggen his hands? Well, he's wearing gloves, so. What are your thoughts on the widespread conspiracy that Trump faked the assassination attempt? I don't really think that he did, because again, I don't think they could pull that off. I think that he would have blabbed about it. I'm saying, there are conspiracies I believe in and conspiracies I don't. The conspiracy that I do believe in is that they're all evil pedophiles and they will do anything and everything they can behind closed doors to lie to you and you over. I believe in all of those conspiracies. I don't believe in like crisis actor type conspiracies because for one, there's like basically no examples of them really happening. There is some in history, but it's not like really common. And for two, this administration is really incompetent. I just don't think they could do that or keep it secret. Playing devil's advocate here, but what if they faked it without telling Trump? Yeah, but part of the conspiracy then would have to be that Trump is faking the ear injury. Because the only way that you could get the blood on Trump's face from a real bullet that was fired without Trump knowing about it would be to have an actual sniper actually fire and miss Trump's head by a tiny, tiny, tiny amount. They would never risk shooting Trump. And there's no sniper in the world so good that they would risk like taking a shot like that from that distance, but like graze his ear, but not get his head. It's not really feasible. Well, yeah, he is faking it though. His ear is nothing. I mean, his ear got like a scuff on it and then immediately it healed. I just don't think it's doable, I guess. Not saying I believe it's fake for real, but does ear cartilage really heal like this? Look, all I'm saying is that you either need to have Trump have a fake ear squib or something for blood in his face, or you need to have a sniper actually fire and then deliberately only graze his ear, which is insane. But if he did have an ear squib, I think that he would have blabbed about it. I don't think Trump can lie, It was a fake bullet. That firefighter behind him just did that. One of the agents could have just had a small razor blade and cut his ear while they jumped on him with like 50 news cameras pointed at him. No, absolutely not. No, I don't know. It seems like a fruitless endeavor. Are there not enough real conspiracies to entertain ourselves with? Like the country is rapidly falling apart right now. And there's some like very like just today I read a news article on how the assistant press secretary for the Department of Homeland Security, if I recall correctly, benefited from a no-bid contract that gave like $200 million to her and people around her, and now she's got a private jet. Yeah, Tricia McLaughlin. I wish I could remember names. Mouthpiece of the DHS posted a private jet photo to her Instagram. It was recently revealed her husband's company won a subcontract on a non-compete $220 million contract from DHS in a deal described by experts as corrupt and worthy of investigation. And I love that what she wants to do with this private jet money is post on Instagram with it. Like, none of these people are that different from us. All the evil and corruption in the world, and at the end of the day, they just want to like be popular on social media. That's another thing that makes Trump different and makes Trump irreplaceable. JD Vance wakes up and he sees his replies on social media and he goes, like he has an urge to engage with all that. Trump only does so incidentally.